My son slapped me for sitting on her couch. His wife kicked me. All about $43.00 M. But 911 heard everything, so did my lawyer. This isn't your house anymore, old woman. You sit where I allow you to sit. That was the first thing she said to me as I lowered myself onto the edge of the couch, my couch, the same one I bought in 1984 with my first full year's earnings after my husband's stroke. Mahogany wood, carved lion's feet, imported cushions. I had it made to order by a man in Pennsylvania who signed his name beneath the frame. For 40 years, no one sat on that couch unless I offered them tea first. It had seen Sunday prayers, Christmas mornings, and Andrew's first broken heart. But today, in Clarissa's living room, that couch sat under a chandelier I never bought, against walls I no longer painted, in a house I no longer owned. I sat anyway. I reached out and touched the armrest. The carving was faded now, lacquered over in some glossy varnish Clarissa must have ordered off some influencer's Pinterest board. There were no scratches anymore, no trace of the mark my wedding ring had made when I collapsed onto it after my husband's third seizure. She had scrubbed me out of it, detail by detail. She came closer. I could smell her perfume. Sharp, synthetic, expensive. She always wore it too heavy, like she needed to prove something before she opened her mouth. Then she opened it. This isn't your house anymore, old woman. You sit where I allow you to sit. I didn't answer. She slapped me so fast I barely had time to blink. Her hand caught the side of my cheek, the force tipping my glasses halfway off my nose. I was still adjusting them when her foot landed against my shin. It was a clean, pointed kick. Not hard enough to break me, just hard enough to humiliate. I let myself fall, not from pain, from choice. My body folded down to the rug, and I stayed there, palms flat on a carpet I had not chosen. Air filled with the scent of citrus cleaner. Clarissa loomed above me, breathing like she had just climbed a mountain, and then I saw him. Andrew. He stood at the archway between the kitchen and the living room, holding a tumbler of something dark. Bourbon, maybe. The same way his father used to hold his guilt. He did not run to me. He did not shout at his wife. He did not even blink. He looked down at me and said, "4.3 million? You should have died before you touched it." And that was when I understood. He had known what she would do. He had allowed it. Maybe even encouraged it. I did not say a word. Instead, I turned my chin slightly toward the brooch, pinned to the collar of my cardigan. Silver, shaped like a lily. Inside it, hidden beneath the petals, was a microcamera. It had been recording since I stepped inside. 8 minutes, 26 seconds. Every word, every strike, every dollar I had become unworthy of, according to them. I pressed my hand into the rug and stood. Clarissa stepped back, maybe surprised I did not cry. I adjusted my sweater and let my eyes wander to the corner of the room. The photo was still there. It hung on the wall near the staircase, a framed family portrait from 10 years ago. The 5 of us, me, Andrew, Clarissa, baby Noah, and my late husband. We had taken it on Easter Sunday. I remember Clarissa made me change out of my apron before we posed, said it made the house look provincial. I remember she wore ivory, I wore yellow. That was the last holiday she ate anything I cooked. The frame had been tilted slightly. Her head now sat just above mine. I said, "Get off that couch," Clarissa spat. I looked at her. Her face was flushed, her eyes narrow, her lips pinched the way they always did when she was about to play victim. She was already rehearsing what she'd say, how I had fallen on my own, how I escalated things, how I was always so dramatic. I picked up my purse from the side table, slowly, calmly, like a woman retrieving her gloves from church. Andrew took a sip of his drink and turned toward the kitchen. I pulled out my phone and pressed the emergency dial. 911, what's your emergency? The voice came, calm and practiced. My daughter-in-law slapped me, I said. I need someone to hear this, that's all. I ended the call. Clarissa did not speak. She was waiting for me to yell, to beg, to plead, but I had no words for her, not anymore. I opened the front door. The late afternoon sun touched my face as I stepped out. The air smelled like hydrangeas and distant barbecues. My neighbor across the street, a kind widow named Marjorie, was pruning her garden. She looked up and smiled. I smiled back. She would never know what had just happened behind those walls. But she had once told me, "You carry yourself like a woman who has already won." I opened the car door. My hands were steady. Inside the glove compartment, a flash drive waited. I always made a copy. Always. Trust is earned, and mine had run dry years ago. I looked in the rearview mirror. My cheek was red, my lips pressed tight, but not trembling. My eyes, his eyes, were wide and clear. "She thinks I'm weak," I whispered. Then I smiled. Let her keep thinking that. That night, I brewed a pot of green tea and sat in the sunroom of my apartment, the one I bought in my own name, with the last of my mother's inheritance. I watched the river move slowly through the dark. It had rained earlier, and the current was quiet, like it was holding its breath. I sent the footage to Mark, my lawyer. Along with it, I typed one sentence. Clause 7, effective immediately. Then I turned off my phone. And I slept like someone who had just walked through the last door she would ever let them close. People think betrayal happens in a single moment. One sharp turn, one loud fight, one cruel sentence. They are wrong. Betrayal is slow, like water through wood. It warps you over time. The first time I signed something I should not have, Andrew was 12. I had just mortgaged the ancestral home, my parents' house, the only land we had left, to open a corner diner in town. He needed braces. His father had just lost mobility in both legs. We were living off what I could make cleaning motels and baking pies out of a shared church kitchen. The banker told me, "If it fails, you lose the house." I told him if I do nothing, I lose my husband. He never asked again. I named it June's Table. Not after me, after the month we got married. The only month in our lives where nothing bad happened. I opened that diner 6 days a week. I cooked through fevers. I smiled through funerals. I served soup to people who once called me the janitor's wife. That place fed our mortgage, paid for school supplies, and put Andrew in band camp when his father could no longer walk to the auditorium. Clarissa came into our lives just after Andrew turned 23. She wore her ambition like perfume, strong and unmistakable. She said the right things, called me Mom, complimented my green bean casserole, but never once offered to wash a dish, not even when my husband started bleeding through the sheets. 9 years I cared for that man, 9 years of lifting, bathing, changing sheets, massaging sores, speaking for him when he forgot how to speak for himself. There were nights I would sit by his bed and whisper the same bedtime prayer I used to say over Andrew, just to keep my voice from cracking. Clarissa never touched a towel. She called the hospital once. When I was late to bring her mail, Andrew told me she was overwhelmed. "She's not used to this kind of illness," he said. Neither was I. But I did not get to opt out. We buried my husband in spring. A quiet funeral, mostly family. Clarissa wore white, said it was a color of peace. She cried into Andrew's shoulder and did not say a word to me that whole day. A year later, they asked to move in. "Just until we save up for our own place," Andrew said. I said yes, of course I did. They were my only family. I made up the guest room. I left the drawer empty. I even made space in the kitchen, though Clarissa brought her own spices and never touched mine. I knew things had changed when she started locking the door to the guest bathroom, but I kept quiet. It was a Tuesday, rainy, cold, when Andrew came into the kitchen with wet eyes and shaky hands. He sat at the table like a boy again. "Mom," he said, "I need to ask you something, and I hate that I have to." I stopped washing dishes. He did not look up, just kept wringing his hands. "Clarissa won't sign the refinance if you're still on the deed. She says it's complicated. The lawyer says it's better if everything's in our name for now, but I swear it's still your house, Mom. I swear." I said nothing. "Please, Mom, just until we're stable. You trust me, right?" I stared at the same table where I had once iced his ankle after soccer practice, where I had taught him how to subtract with sugar packets, where I had placed my husband's pain pills, measured by hours, not milligrams. He put his hand over mine. "Mom, you love us, right?" And there it was. Not a question, a test. I nodded, and I signed. I signed because I believed in blood, because no one had ever taught me the language of self-preservation, because I thought love meant handing over the keys and never asking when they'd be returned, After I signed, Clarissa hugged me and said, "This will make things so much easier." She never said thank you. That week, the locks were changed. They said it was for security. I said nothing. They moved their furniture in, packed mine into the garage. "We'll store it properly," Andrew promised, but by winter, my old couch was on Craigslist. The rocking chair my husband built, gone. The wedding china boxed and labeled Misk. I told myself it was fine, that I was still welcome, that I had done the right thing. Then one morning I came home from the market, and my house key no longer worked. Clarissa opened the door 2 inches and said, "Oh, Andrew meant to tell you, we had to rekey everything, insurance reasons." I waited for her to hand me a new key. She never did, and I still said nothing. That night, I slept on a friend's couch. I told her it was just temporary, that Andrew would fix it. He never did. The next week, Clarissa sent me an email. Not a call, not a visit, an email. It read, "Going forward, please text before arriving. We're trying to preserve the space for our own family dynamic. I'm sure you understand." I read it twice. Then I deleted it. And still, I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's a strategy. I wasn't mute, I was memorizing. Every door they locked, every insult disguised as concern, every lie they told with a smile. I didn't speak, because I was archiving. Because when a wound is slow, you do not feel the cut, only the scar. That scar would grow for 3 more years, until the slap. But back then, I still believed him. Still believed, in that trembling voice, those wet eyes, that quiet plea. "Mom, you love us, right?" I did, and I do. But love is not a deed, and trust should not cost a house. It started with a file folder. 3 months before the slap, I found it in the bottom drawer of the study desk. Clarissa had left the cabinet unlocked. She always said she did not trust old systems, so she backed everything up digitally, but she still printed things, out of habit or paranoia. That day, while looking for the warranty paper for the dishwasher she said I had probably broken, I opened the wrong drawer. Inside, 3 folders, labeled neatly in her handwriting, asset transfer drafts, inheritance planning, and household restructure legal. My name was printed on only one of them, as former owner. There were highlighted sections, lawyer comments, notarization drafts I had never seen, terms like power of occupancy, senior release of title, and something called a diminished capacity memo. I am no legal expert, but I raised 2 children, buried a husband, and ran a business for 14 years. I know when someone is preparing to erase you. I put the folder back exactly as I found it. Then I made tea, not because I wanted it, but because rituals calm the hands when the heart is not ready to tremble. That night, I ordered a smartwatch with voice activation and encrypted audio sync. The model was simple, discreet, marketed toward hikers and solo travelers. I told Andrew it was a gift from a neighbor, a fitness tracker. He did not ask twice. Clarissa, on the other hand, had once ripped out the kitchen security cam after she tripped over the cat. "Your mother keeps bumping things and blaming me," she told Andrew, while staring right at me. He believed her. The house became quieter after that. Not because there were fewer arguments, but because fewer of them were recorded. She started locking drawers, password protecting her emails, speaking in whispers when she talked to her attorney on speakerphone. I started pressing record when I woke up. The watch caught everything. Snide comments, financial threats, muttered plans. Clarissa spoke like the house was hers. Andrew rarely corrected her. When I asked about overdue mail, she told me I was imagining things. When I noticed my prescription was missing, she said I had misplaced it. When I asked why my bedroom was suddenly used for storage, she told me, "Old women don't need privacy, just peace and warm socks." Every night, I transferred the day's audio to my laptop, encrypted the file, and emailed it to Mark. Mark was the only man who still called me ma'am with sincerity. He had been my husband's student years ago, back when I was still young enough to be underestimated, but old enough to notice. When my husband died, Mark had sent flowers and a handwritten note. When the house deed was transferred out of my name, he was the only one who raised a red flag. I trusted him with the files. I trusted him with my silence. After the slap, after the couch and the kick and Andrew's words, I sat in my car, breathing through my teeth. I looked at the red imprint on my cheek in the rearview mirror and touched it once, not to soothe, just to confirm it was real. Then I reached for my phone. I pressed and held the emergency dial. 911, what's your emergency? The voice was calm, trained, distant. My daughter-in-law slapped me, I said. Pause. I need someone to hear this. That's all. The line went quiet for a moment. Then I heard the soft click of the call being recorded. I ended it before they could ask questions. I did not need a patrol car. I needed documentation. That one sentence, those 9 words, carried more weight than a broken bone. Later that night, I uploaded the footage. The brooch cam had captured the entire scene. Clarissa's voice, the impact, Andrew's silence. You could even hear the ice in his glass. The 911 call paired with the footage like a lock and key. I did not cry as I sent it. Instead, I boiled water. I fed the cat. I watered the dying orchid by the window, not because I believed it would bloom again, but because tending to something fragile still made me feel human. Mark responded within the hour. Received, solid, confirming Clause 7 activation window. Will advise. Clause 7. It was the quiet clause. The one they laughed at during the first round of papers, back when I insisted on it. Clarissa had smirked when Mark read it aloud. In the event of proven physical, verbal, or financial abuse toward the original owner, all transfers are subject to full revocation at discretion of legal counsel. She had laughed and said, well, I guess we'll be on our best behavior. Andrew had said, it's just a formality. We'll never need it. I had nodded, smiled, signed, and under my breath I whispered, but I will. The next morning I got up early, cleaned the counters, swept the entryway, folded the blanket on the guest bed where they had made me sleep the past few months after Clarissa said my joint pain groaning was keeping them awake. Then I placed the flash drive on the dining table. Beside it, a single note. I remember everything. Mom. They would find it after the meeting, but by then it would be too late. They scheduled the meeting for a Thursday. Clarissa wanted it at 10 a.m. Morning energy is best for clarity, she said in the email. She arrived early, wearing a white blazer and heels sharp enough to pierce drywall. Andrew walked in 10 minutes late with a paper cup of overpriced coffee and sunglasses still on. He said nothing to me, not even hello. The conference room smelled like printer toner and lemon disinfectant. A notary sat at the far end, flipping through paperwork with the quiet precision of someone who had seen too many families in too few chairs. Clarissa smiled at me across the table like a weather girl, delivering bad news with charm. I know this whole thing has been hard for you, she said, voice dipped in sweet poison. But I promise, once we finalize today, it'll be simpler for everyone. Mark sat beside me. No expression. Just a pen and a leather briefcase that had been in his family longer than my daughter-in-law had known my name. The folder was passed down the table. Clarissa signed with flair. Andrew leaned back in his chair, tapped the edge of the table, and said with a smirk, Mom won't even remember signing this next week. They laughed, lightly, like it was a joke. I said nothing. The notary prepared to record the signatures. Clarissa adjusted her hair. Andrew sipped his coffee. And then Mark opened the briefcase. He pulled out a red folder, thicker, stamped, sealed. He slid it across the table like a dealer laying down a final card. I'd like this entered into record, Mark said, calm and measured. It concerns Clause 7 of the agreement signed on January 17th, 3 years ago. Clarissa froze. Andrew blinked. What clause? Mark didn't look at him. The clause that stipulates immediate revocation of all transfers in the event of confirmed abuse, physical, verbal, or financial, toward the original owner. Clarissa let out a small laugh, dry and high-pitched. That's ridiculous. That clause was ceremonial. You said it was ceremonial. I said it was protective, Mark replied. And today, it is active. He reached into his bag and placed a tablet in front of the notary. The screen showed the recording, Clarissa's voice, her slap, her words, the kick, Andrew's silence, then his voice. $4,300,000 0 cents. You should have died before you touched it. The room went quiet. Clarissa's mouth opened, then closed. Andrew pushed his chair back slightly. Mark turned to the notary. This footage was captured via a concealed body camera with timestamp synchronization and has been authenticated by both digital and legal protocols. Abuse is clearly evidenced. Clarissa's voice cracked. "This is emotional manipulation." Andrew slammed his hand on the table. "You set us up. You planned this." I looked at him, my son, and said, very softly, "You gave me no choice." Mark continued. "As per Clause 7, Section B, this recording nullifies the current transfer agreement. All legal rights to assets, properties, and titles revert to the original owner, effective immediately." The notary did not speak for several seconds. Then he nodded, picked up his pen, and wrote 2 words. "Revocation confirmed." Clarissa stood so quickly her chair toppled backward. She didn't notice. "You can't do this. We had a deal." Mark looked at her. "You had a mother-in-law," he said, "and you lost her." Andrew stared at the table, red rising in his neck, his hands clenched. "This is elder exploitation," he muttered. "She's weaponizing her age." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You mean the age she spent feeding you, bathing your father, and funding your entire adult life?" No one spoke. The notary handed the folder back to me. Everything was mine again. Clarissa grabbed her bag and stormed out. Andrew stayed, just for a second. Then he looked at me. No rage, no apology, just the hollow gaze of a man who realized the faucet had been shut off. He followed her. I sat there for a moment longer, hands on the table, breathing evenly. Mark packed up the documents. "You handled that with restraint," he said. I smiled. "You say that like it was easy." He shook his head. "It was earned." We walked out together. The sky outside was clear, the wind gentle. I had come into that room with scars they could not see, but I left it with something better than revenge. I left it with my name, my power, my home, and the last word. By that evening, their names were gone. Mark worked fast. I had signed the last revocation form by noon. By 4:00 p.m., Andrew and Clarissa were locked out of every shared account, checking, savings, the investment portfolios I had once set up for their future. Their access to the trust was cut off. The cards linked to my estate account declined at the gas station, then again at the grocery store. I imagined the moment they realized the faucet had run dry. The property title was updated within 24 hours. My name restored, full and final. Their names removed like stains from linen, a quiet erasure, just like the one they tried to make of me. The house they had occupied, my house, was officially reclaimed under clause-backed reversal. I gave them 30 days to vacate, but I knew Clarissa would not go quietly. She never did. The next morning, I received a call from my neighbor Marjorie. "Are you watching the internet?" she asked. "No, I am making tea." "Well, your daughter-in-law is crying on it." I sat down, logged in. There she was. Clarissa. Sitting in my kitchen, mascara running, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "I just want people to know," she sniffled to the camera. "We were forced out. She kicked us out, my mother-in-law. We tried to care for her, we tried to give her a home, and this is how she thanks us." Her napkin had initials embroidered in gold. Her tears fell in rehearsed pauses. It wasn't grief, it was branding gone wrong. Never mind that the house was funded by decades of someone else's back pain, someone else's skipped meals, someone else's silence. They cried over the money, but they never asked what it had cost to earn. "She's old, she's confused, and now we're homeless." The comments poured in. At first, sympathy, then silence, then something else. Someone posted the video, the slap, the kick. Andrew's voice. "You should have died before you touched it." The brooch cam footage. The 911 call. Paired, synced, posted to a subreddit titled r/Elder Abuse Justice, and from there it spread like fire. One user wrote, "They gaslit this woman, stole from her, hit her, and now they're crying on Instagram?" Another said, "Imagine being this cruel and still thinking you're the victim." Clarissa's tear-stained live stream was stitched side by side with the footage of her hitting me over and over. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, slow motion, subtitled, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Threads. My name trended, not because I asked for justice, but because I had recorded it. By the end of the day, Clarissa's PR clients, fashion brands, wellness apps, a few tech startups, released statements. "We do not condone abuse. We have terminated all partnerships." Within 48 hours, Clarissa's personal website was taken down. Andrew lost his access badge to the Sterling Group campus. Not because I told them to, but because the company's ethics clause allowed immediate disassociation upon verified misconduct toward a founding shareholder, which again was me. I sat on my sunroom couch, the one they had said was too outdated, and watched the numbers grow. Views, shares, hashtags. I did not comment, I did not repost. I let the truth do the work. They say isolation is the worst punishment, but I had been isolated long before that Thursday. I had been ignored at dinner tables, excluded from conversations, erased from decisions. What came now was not punishment. It was perspective. For them. Andrew sent a short email 2 days later. This was never what I wanted. You didn't have to make it public. I didn't reply. Because I had not made it public, their actions did. Clarissa's Instagram went private. Andrew deleted his LinkedIn. I changed the locks again, not because I was afraid, but because I was finished. Finished asking for permission to sit in my own living room. Finished hoping my silence would teach them grace. Finished waiting. There was no ceremony to their downfall. No fireworks. Just distance, and the knowledge that this time, finally, no one could twist the story. Because the world had already seen it, and the world, for once, believed me. I asked him to meet me at Mark's office. Noah arrived 10 minutes early, wearing a wrinkled button-down and jeans too short at the ankle. He had grown tall in the last year, taller than his father had ever been. His voice had dropped, but his eyes were still the same. Curious, soft, watchful. He greeted me like always, a brief hug, one hand firm, the other hovering like he still wasn't sure if it was okay to hold on too long. "Grandma," he said, looking nervous, "is everything okay?" "Yes, sweetheart, everything's better now." Mark offered him water. Noah declined. We sat at the conference table, no press, no announcement, no cameras, just a manila envelope in my hand and a conversation waiting to be had. I slid the envelope across the table. Noah blinked. "What's this?" "Open it." He did. The papers were clean, stapled, signed. A 25% share transfer of Sterling Group's equity, legally executed, irrevocable, and filed that morning. His fingers shook as he read. He looked up slowly. "Why me?" I smiled, not because I was proud, not because I needed him to be grateful, but because it felt good to be understood before being asked. "Not because you defended me," I said, "but because you never needed proof to remember who I was." He didn't speak right away. His eyes welled up. He looked away, pretending to blink something out of his lashes, but there were no lashes in the way. That day, after the slap, he was the one who found me in the driveway. Clarissa had already locked the door. Andrew had gone inside without a word. Noah walked out quietly, carrying a towel and a small first aid kit. He didn't say anything. He just sat beside me on the garden bench and pressed the towel to my cheek. "Too much ice can burn," he had said softly, so I warmed it a little. He was 16. He did not ask questions. He did not record it. He simply remembered me as someone worth treating gently. 10 years earlier, when he was 8, he gave me a folded letter inside a red envelope for my birthday. I still remember the way he ran up to me, giggling, cheeks red with excitement. I opened it that night, after everyone had gone home. It said, in shaky handwriting, "Grandma, you're my safe place. Thank you for your hugs and your hot cocoa. I like when you pray for me. Don't ever move away, okay? Love, Noah." I kept it in my wallet for a decade. The ink had faded, but the weight of those words never did. I watched him read through the documents again, his mouth slightly open, like the air had changed. "But I didn't do anything to deserve this." I nodded. "That's why it's yours." There's something sacred in a young man who sees his grandmother not as fragile, but as whole, who doesn't wait for proof or bruises or public videos to believe a quiet woman can still be wrong. Noah never asked what really happened between me and his parents. He already knew. Because he was the only one who stayed behind that night. The only one who knocked on my door 2 days later with a bag of groceries and said, "Do you want to eat together? Or I can just leave these, whatever's okay." The only one who saw me as a person. I told him he didn't have to do anything with the shares right away. They're yours to keep, or to grow, or to pass on, if you choose to be the kind of father your father forgot to be. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment I saw the boy with red cheeks again, the one who once taped crayon drawings to my refrigerator and called me Grandma because Grandma was too long to write in block letters. "I won't let you down," he said. "I know," I replied. We stood up. I hugged him. Tighter this time. No hesitation. Before he left, I reached into my bag and handed him something. The envelope. The one from when he was 8. His handwriting, faded but legible. His eyes widened. "You kept this?" "I keep what matters." He held the letter like it was made of glass. Then he hugged me again, arms all the way around, like I would disappear if he let go. Later that night, I sat in my sunroom, same chair, same tea. But something felt different, like one thread of the fabric had been rewoven, stronger, quieter, unspoken. I had given away millions, but what I received in return was something money couldn't buy. Legacy. Not in bricks or bank accounts, but in memory. In kindness passed forward. In the quiet reward of knowing that someone, somewhere, had been watching when the world looked away, and that someone chose to remember. The press called it a legacy move. I called it a promise kept. 3 months after the documents were finalized and the silence became peace, I stood at a podium I never expected to see, in a hall I had once passed 1,000 times without notice. There were flowers on the stage, white lilies, my husband's favorite. Cameras pointed gently in my direction. And behind me, on a navy blue banner, 3 words shimmered in silver. Silent Seat Foundation. The name came from Clarissa, more specifically from what she said the day she hit me. "You don't get a seat unless I say so." I remember those words more clearly than the slap, because they were not about violence. They were about erasure, about entitlement, about being told, in the house I helped build, that I was less than a guest. So I decided to build something else. Something louder than her voice, but spoken without shouting. I sold the second property Clarissa and Andrew had once planned to turn into a content house. I liquidated a dormant retirement fund I had kept hidden from both of them, money meant for rainy days. Well, the rain had come, and it was time to grow something from it. I transferred the full $4,300,000, 0 cents, into the foundation's trust account. Every cent. Noah helped me file the paperwork. He insisted on learning every detail, not because I asked him to, but because he wanted to understand where it all went wrong and how we could make it right for others. The foundation's mission was clear: protect elderly women from coercive asset transfers, familial exploitation, and post-retirement isolation. Too many women were being pushed out of their own homes, their own wills, their own worth. Not with fists, but with phrases. "You don't need all this space. Let's just simplify the paperwork. We're only trying to help." Help, I had learned, can be a weapon when it's offered with a contract and a smile. The foundation partnered with elder law attorneys, social workers, and retired judges. We created a hotline, discreet, staffed, and trained. We funded emergency housing for women pushed out after accidental estate changes. We launched digital awareness campaigns and translated them into 5 languages. We offered one thing I never had: a safe second opinion. When I stood at that podium, the room was quiet. I wore gray, simple, respectful. Noah stood behind me holding a speech he had written and rewritten 5 times. His hands trembled, but his voice did not. "I'm not up here because I'm her favorite," he began. "I'm up here because I remembered who she was before anyone needed proof." People nodded. Some wiped their eyes. He continued. "My grandma never raised her voice, but the world heard her anyway. And now, because she spoke without shouting, thousands of other women will never have to beg for a seat at their own table." I looked down at my hands. They were the same hands that had once washed floors for tips. The same hands that had cradled a dying husband and signed away a home I thought would keep us together. The same hands Clarissa had tried to erase. Now, they held the deed to something bigger. Revenge fades, but dignity, when returned, becomes architecture. I wasn't building back what I lost. I was building what they never imagined I could. After Noah's speech, I stepped up again. I did not read from notes. I spoke plainly. "I am not a victim," I said. "I am a woman who survived her own silence." Cameras clicked. "There is power in quiet," I continued. "But sometimes you have to plant that quiet where it can grow loud." I told them about the couch, about the brooch, about the letter Noah wrote when he was 8 that I still kept in a drawer. I told them about the moment I realized being good was not the same as being safe. And I ended with this: if you were ever cropped out of the photo, if you were ever asked to give up your seat in a room you helped build, this foundation is for you. The crowd stood, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. That night I sat alone in the sunroom, just like always, but this time I opened a letter, handwritten, thick paper, the good kind. It was from a woman in Ohio. She had seen the live stream, the footage, the headlines. She had lost her home to her daughter's second husband, who told her she owed them her name. She had called the Silent Seat hotline. She had been heard, represented, protected. Her final sentence read, "You saved me before we ever met." I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. I had lost many things: my son's respect, years I would never get back, a name that had once meant family, but I had built something from the bruises, and now no one, not Clarissa, not Andrew, not even time, could take it away. He called me ma'am when he showed up at my door. No one calls me that anymore, except grocery clerks and debt collectors who realize too late I own nothing. But I recognized him. Even after 37 years, the boy I used to sneak cornbread to behind the diner, the one with knees too dirty to pass school dress code, the one who used to stutter so badly he pointed to the menu instead of speaking. "Ma'am," he said again, softer this time, "you probably don't remember me." "I remember everyone I feed," I told him. His eyes welled. He took off his cap. "I'm a reporter now," he said, "or trying to be. Freelance, mostly stories no one pays attention to, but I saw the live stream, the video, and I knew I had to find you." He didn't ask for money. He asked for truth. And I gave it to him. Not everything, just enough. The slap, the camera, the foundation, the silence that finally spoke. He listened like someone who'd never been believed. I saw it in his hands, the way they trembled when I played him the 911 call, the way he clicked his recorder off and on like he was afraid it would all disappear. "I know someone at the platform," he said when I showed him the footage again. "If I send this, it won't get buried." And it didn't. 2 days later, it hit the front page of r/Elder Abuse Justice. The title was simple: "She Sat Anyway." The post included the full CCTV clip. The moment I sat down on my own sofa, the slap, the kick, my son's face like stone, the sound of Clarissa's heel hitting my shin. Paired with it was the 911 audio. "My daughter-in-law slapped me. I need someone to hear this." That's all. There was no screaming. No accusations, just proof. And the world heard it. Within hours, the subreddit exploded. Women in their 60s and 70s shared their stories of homes signed away, pensions redirected, wills rewritten under pressure. Younger women stitched in their grandmother's photos, writing, "She built everything, and they made her feel like a guest." One comment stood out. The slap didn't break her. The silence did. And then she weaponized it. Clarissa tried to respond. She posted a Notes app apology with phrases like misunderstanding, emotional stress, and context matters. But the internet has a longer memory than she does. A fashion label she once did PR for reposted her apology with one line crossed out in red: "We do not condone this behavior." Contract terminated, effective immediately. By the end of the week, she had lost 4 clients. By the end of the month, her agency dropped her entirely. Clarissa went quiet. Andrew for a while did too. But then came the letter from Sterling Group's ethics board. I was copied as a primary shareholder. It read, "After internal review and per clause 9.4 of our beneficiary conduct agreement, all medical and financial benefits previously extended to Mr. Andrew G. Sutherland are hereby revoked. Grounds: violation of fiduciary trust, documented elder abuse, and reputational harm to founding shareholders." That clause was mine. I'd written it into the group's founding documents 27 years ago when my husband first turned his consulting firm into something real. He had wanted to skip the legalities. I had insisted. "Put it on paper," I told him, "so they know how far we'll go for dignity." Andrew must have forgotten that. The benefits were gone. Health coverage, retirement match, his automatic bonus tier, All of it. He emailed once, "You're destroying my life." I didn't reply, because I wasn't. He had done that already. I had simply stopped saving him from the consequences. The reporter emailed me again. Weeks later, it hit national. News anchors called it a viral reckoning. Columnists said it uncovered the quiet epidemic of legal exploitation behind closed doors. One psychologist on a panel cried on live TV and said, "This is what it means to survive politely." I turned off the screen. I didn't need validation, I had receipts. Noah printed the subreddit page and framed it. He gave it to me on a quiet Sunday after we had finished planting marigolds in the garden. He pointed to one comment. She never raised her voice, but the world heard her anyway. He said, "That's the one." I nodded. He hung it in the hallway, where Clarissa once said the wallpaper made the house look tired. It never looked more alive. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it uploads at 2 a.m. from a reporter's cracked laptop. Sometimes it's a comment thread. Sometimes it's a contract clause no one took seriously until it lit the whole house on fire. They thought I'd sit quietly forever, but I remembered every word, and when the world finally listened, it shattered the silence they had mistaken for weakness. Now all that remains is truth, and room to sit wherever I damn well please. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy, handwritten, no return address, just my name. Inside, 7 words etched in the same boyish handwriting I used to correct on his math tests. "I know what I did. If you ever want to see me again, room 7, next Thursday noon." No signature, no apology. But I knew. I read it once, folded it neatly, placed it in the drawer beside my bed. That Thursday, I woke before dawn. I didn't wear black. I wore the same gray suit I had on the day I took back the deed, simple, lined, the fabric soft at the cuffs. No brooch, no watch, no hidden cameras. That chapter was closed. In my purse, only 2 things: my wedding ring and a folded legal document, witnessed, notarized, bearing my name across the top. Waiver of legal pursuit in perpetuity. His name followed. Not in bold, not underlined, just there, plain. At 11:58, I walked into room 7. It was a quiet space, sterile and gray. A hospital room, not a courtroom. Andrew sat upright in the recliner, a monitor blinking behind him. IV in his arm, no flowers. Just stillness. He looked older than I remembered. Not just tired, deflated. The kind of man who had once counted on being forgiven too many times and finally ran out of chances. He tried to stand. I shook my head. "No need," I said. We said nothing for a while, just the sound of the clock ticking, 3 seconds too slow. I placed the ring on the table between us. It caught the light. He stared at it. "This was Dad's." I nodded. "I wore it for 47 years, through everything, until the day you looked at me like I was the furniture." His mouth tightened. I took the second paper from my purse. "I brought you this," I said, laying it beside the ring. He leaned forward, read the title. Eyes widened. "You're letting me go?" "No," I said. "I'm letting myself go. From needing anything from you." He swallowed hard. "I was wrong." I said nothing. He tried again. "I don't expect you to—" "You were my son," I interrupted, voice even. "But now you are a man I survived." His shoulders crumpled. But I didn't move. No hug, no tears, just air between us and history thick in it. After a moment I stood. He looked up. "Will I ever see you again?" I picked up my purse. "That's no longer mine to answer." And I walked out. The door closed with a soft click. No goodbye, no forgiveness ceremony, just the truth and time. If you were ever cropped out of the photo, if you were ever called a burden for sitting in a room you built, if they told you that quiet meant weak and age meant done and generosity meant you owed them more, then this story is yours, because the ones they call trash often funded the whole damn house. She never called herself a hero, never raised her voice, but when they tried to erase her, she recorded. When they tried to unseat her, she built a bench for others, and when they asked her to disappear, she wrote her name in permanent ink. That's the kind of woman she was. Not a martyr, not a saint, just a grandmother with a memory longer than their patience. and now the world remembers too.